One of the places that people have tons of problems with these coding agents is that they just hit walls, right? Like there's bugs or something that pops up, or they don't know how to fix a specific problem, or maybe how to structure the problem right. Asking questions can help in making sure that you're getting that right input to start, as well as, using voice, I think, to include more context on those problems. How do you break through problems that come up with the coding agents where it maybe can't figure out a solution, or the output is buggy and like the end product is actually not exactly what you want? Like, what does QA process look like? How do you actually break through some of these challenges?
The first kind of call that I make is usually it's like, okay, if I'm interacting with an agent, say it's like Replit or Claude or whatever, and we're kind of hitting a wall, or like we haven't made any progress in like 2 or 3 hours, like I'm kind of like in a loop, like a death loop. Usually, I think everyone eventually experiences these like death loops. Usually that is a sign that the context window is now polluted with a bunch of irrelevant information. So like you're kind of like after like you're like 25 interactions in on this problem, and then the agent's kind of like trying to hold a bunch of irrelevant context in his context window while it's talking to you. So usually like first step is to spawn a new agent that has a fresh context and have it attack the problem with a clear mind. The second thing is, and I try to do this before you spend 3 hours. Like you might want to try some of these tactics like earlier rather than like accepting it like you're at a wall. The second thing is to give it to a smarter agent. And usually it's like the smartest agent. I mean, I think you should just only be using the smartest models because they have a higher ceiling than everything else. It's just better to use the smartest model. Maybe not if you're building a wrapper and then you're going to serve that to 100,000 people, maybe then you should be conscious about which model you use. But for building the first version of anything, use the smartest model available. If that model hits the wall, like it might be this context rot issue. And it might just be that like what you're asking for is like the way you frame the problem is a little bit like incorrect. And so generally like taking a step back, and then also you might benefit from waiting for the next model improvement to solve that problem. So it's a lot of times, you hit the end of, part of it is like the model, like the problem's complexity might be at the limit of the current version of the model, but that capacity to solve problems keeps going up. Like I don't know what the current limit of the coding agents are. And like Codex and 4.6, I don't know what they can't do. And the only way to find that out is to keep giving them hard problems.
Are we at the point yet where you could use a coding agent to develop it, and then you can use some sort of an agent on the UI end to then test it, click different things, and feedback to the coding agent? Like if you're thinking about actually how does it QA itself, have you done that before, and kind of what's the best methods that you've seen?
My instinct usually is to build tools that the agents can use, and then secondarily build a human layer on top of that. So first, it's like what tools can agents use, like APIs and CLI tools. So like you're talking to an agent that operates in the CLI. The agent can also use its own terminal and spin up more terminals. So giving it a tool that it can use in the terminal allows it to very quickly build essentially like the back end of the application, or like the tool. If the agent can use the tool and then it'll keep using the tool and then improve the tool until the agent is good at using the tool. That's step one. Step two is building an interface on top of it. But the CLI tools are very testable. Like the agent can use it and then review the output. It's a very native kind of experience for agents to just like, they have the closed loop of like input, output. They can read the help docs. They can update the CLI tool to be better. And then the web UI stuff, browser agents are better than they've ever been. So like clicking around a screen to like test things. So you can basically, like you can take your website and you can say, Claude, like you're working on your website with Claude, and you can tell it to pretend you are a mobile user coming to the website for the first time, and then I want you to like explore it and then give me an analysis on your usability. And it'll basically it'll render the website, it'll resize it so that it's simulating a mobile experience. Then it'll interact as if it's a user visiting your website. So you get the role play of the model pretending to be someone that is coming to your website. You get the like simulated interactions of like scrolling and clicking on a mobile interface. And then that feedback comes back into the coding agent, and then it can make improvements. So that's great because it's like a closed loop of like, it can test the problem. It can test the current state. Problems that are not testable, or where it's not clear what success and failure looks like, that's where actually I think we come in. Where there's more subjective aspects to the problem, that's where like we should generally, human beings, we should just generally be in the space of more subjective stuff. Because anything that's like automatable, we will not like bring as much value to the table.
One of the things that you're a huge proponent of is context engineering versus prompt engineering. You've hit on maybe a little bit of components to this, but can you explain how you think about that?
So I didn't coin it. It's coined by Dex Horthy, who's like, he's one of the fellow Claude addicts out there. But basically, it's this. I think in the GPT-3 era, the term came up, prompt engineering, right? Designing prompts because you get the model to like output something. But then I did like a taxonomy analysis. This was like 3 years ago. I did a taxonomy analysis on what are all of the different prompt engineering techniques. And at the time, there were like 180 at least. Everything from like show the agent a couple examples of how you want the task done, then it's more likely to follow that pattern. Or like, giving it and like allowing it to look at your screen, allow it to look at the problem visually, right? And that's a technique that's interesting because when you provide an image alongside the instructions, actually, I think an image is worth 1,000 words. So you're actually communicating a lot that you wouldn't have otherwise typed. So like multimodal prompting ends up being very useful. So those are all prompt engineering techniques. Like think step by step was a prompt engineering technique that now is the cornerstone of like reasoning, right? The model thinks step by step, and then it's like use tools while you're thinking to like solve the problem. So tool use, they all became like prompting techniques. But now we have so context engineering is a little different. It's more like, I would say it's the way I see it is like thinking about the like AI's bandwidth, like for solving a problem as like a canvas that you can fill with context. And so like maybe part of that is like, these are the tools you're going to need to test the application you're working on. These are the documentations of how we currently do this process. Like what's the relevant context that you need to bring to the AI such that it has a more likely chance of solving the problem? And being very intentional about making sure that the irrelevant context is not there. Because actually like models do better when they don't have this like they don't have irrelevant context. They're singularly focused and everything that they need to solve the problem is like right there or easily retrievable, and then they have like clear access to that. So the context window is kind of like a canvas, and you should be pretty intentional about like not introducing garbage into the context, or like rethinking like, is the coding agent is it being distracted by a lot of things that didn't work that are not relevant to our problem? And then also goes back to why we like CLI tools over say MCP. So like creating tools for agents. There's a whole wave of MCP, and the side effect of using MCPs is that every time when you build an agent, and I have like one of my agents on my Mac Mini has like 25 MCP servers, and that was just like, oh, I'm just going to give it all these tools. But then the way it works is that like every single tool has a description on how to use the tool. So now the agent is trying to memorize how to use 25 different tools, but most of its interactions are just conversational. So like it's holding in context a bunch of tools that are irrelevant to the task at hand, right? You may not need web analytics for every single normal interaction. You might not need like Slack integration for every normal interaction with the agent. And so what happened with MCP, I think, is that like we basically allocated an increasing percentage of the model's bandwidth to tool guides on how to use tools that are irrelevant to every interaction. So the reason why CLI tools are becoming more popular is because part of a CLI tool is like, if the model just does a -- help when it uses that CLI, it gets a guide on how to use the tool. So on demand, it's able to see how the tool should be used, but it's not trying to pre-memorize everything because you only have a certain amount of context window to work with. So and this is a property, progressive disclosure, read the doc when you need the tool, then you can use the tool. It ends up being better than like memorize all of these tools up front. So the model that like can dynamically retrieve the relevant context when it needs it ends up performing better because more of its mind is free to think about the problem.
When you're talking to founders or people who are trying to convert their teams into being AI native, or you're talking to teams that are already AI native that are working at kind of 11 on the spectrum, what are they doing differently? Like, what are you coaching people on in terms of how they can actually build their businesses to be ahead of the pack?
So usually it's like, take the most technical person that you know and give them the best technical model there is, like Codex or Claude Code. And then actually, I think you kind of have to play defense for them. You need to take everything, like you got to let them go deep. And I think you need that person to like spend so much time with AI that they reimagine like their own capabilities. Like they like learn how to use these superpowers. And then they can start reimagining the business. And part of it is that coding agents move through cyberspace at speed and quality, at a speed of knowledge work that was never possible when compared to humans. And that person basically has to do a mini version of what I did, which is like exit their own work and then like learn this new way of doing work and then apply it to the business. And part of it is like coding agents are really fast, rapid prototyping. So you shouldn't have like a 3-week timeline of like making the first version. Like, why can't we make the first version of something today? That's something I always, me and Reid always talk about. It's like, what if we just like ask Codex to do it, see how far it goes today? And then at least we have some of the hypotheses are unpacked. And like that, breaking that cycle of the speed and like breaking the like molasses of the existing org. That's why you kind of have to take this person and like isolate them and allow them to like rip the smartest model. And you got to just you got to invest in them. Like you got to like let them burn a bunch of tokens. You're not going to learn how to use these tools if you're being conservative about how many tokens you're burning. Actually, that number needs to go up like every day. Like, and I don't think that people have like realized this yet. And I think that it starts with you should start with the most technical, like that person, like the very amplified single high agency person that can now, and then they should be allowed to attack any problem because they'll start viewing the entire business as a context window that they could be possibly plugging into. And then the other thing I've noticed is like, because you can make things very quickly, you can actually like, not every team can do that. So then if your competitors can't really think this quickly, cannot build this quickly, that's actually your opportunity. And maybe like you can personalize your solution towards them. You can build things just in time, like very quickly, to solve their unique problem. And that can be a huge advantage. And then now your sales reps can kind of like move in a different way, knowing that the solution, it's not like the classic dynamic of sales reps and engineers, sales reps overpromising something. And then there's some timeline that's going to be like, the engineer's like, whoa, we're not going to make this. Well, actually, if the engineer is like massively amplified with coding agents, that's more tractable. You can actually do something, create something custom very quickly. And I don't think most organizations think of themselves as like that efficient. So they kind of like, if you don't, I think the thing is like, especially if you work in pure software, like you're screwed if you don't think like this.